Hey, are you gonna go pick that up?
No, I got in my big myself.
Me and my taxes.
Yeah, I'm myself.
Don't tell me.
I'm about to
I was okay with being lazy my first year.
home, but I am all right.
I used to like tell them, hey, like, this is available. No, because that whole that Harding? It's like, wow, this is really I'm gonna root for you.
Oh, you texted me.
Dude, I'm actually not
Tomorrow we're gonna meet up. Like around 9 to 11.
I mean, you were killing it. You make Dib
Just
make
lit.
Dib go out.
Well, we might. I'm pretty sure not.
Dude, you had Dib. Dib didn't know what to do. No, you had him. He beat me with that part.
I looked at, I got work
Yeah, no.
That's what I thought of for my first 6. I don't know, but you get it.
I turned mine in. I turned my first one in yesterday. Wait. Yesterday. We're getting my second one today. Almost done. Hopefully by tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Do you have those headphones? Do you have those headphones with you? Because I can't. Stream's all choppy.
So I got it from the open house. He has this one.
Or it might be
my friends that have the Valentine's Day to me, but you know, it's
Yeah.
just
Oh,
friends.
my friends are. Every so week.
Now you have to go somewhere with yourself. I love myself.
Whenever you have like a report test, we broke up that day, 5 hours before. Is that rude?
It is rude. So you
It's rude. But it's okay.
like about 2 shares.
Talk into that. It's not coming through that mic.
My friend had a dream about my
That's
friend had a dream about my house.
That's how
Like,
people literally bet on stocks.
he said, had a dream that he was at your house chilling, like he owned that place.
That's why I come out. I'll be like, oh,
No.
We're gonna go ahead and keep things rolling because we don't want the Olive Garden to get cold. And then we'll get some Olive Garden, and then we have Ernst here. first off, just wanted to say thanks to everyone who helped out at Special Needs Prom. So I heard it went pretty well, so that's good. Oh, you went that too? Yeah. Alright, cool. And then, Beta Office I and APS contracts are due today. If you need one, there's some extra copies over here. The Beta Office I contracts, just the date at the top says September. That's because I ran out of my current one, so I have some last semester's left over. Same information. So those are there. And then EAP dues are $30, and that goes to Nick. Say hi, Nick. Hey. And then APS $15, and that goes to Ray. And then next up, so upcoming, we have the Warren County 4-H Pork Chop Dinner, and that is on March 16th from 5 to 7 p.m. There is a sign-up sheet going around if you're interested in volunteering for that. Basically, what you do is you'll be going there and you'll like serve food essentially. The way that it's like a big fundraiser for Warren County 4-H. So they'll have like the pork chop dinner going on, but they also have this huge live auction. So they have an actual auctioneer, like just basically auctioning off gift baskets and all sorts of stuff. So that's really fun. If you do that, you volunteer. You can also bring $10 and buy or sell the pork chop dinner. So they're really good. Yeah. So yes, that's that. And then we have our regional meeting. And then here's the rest of the professional meetings for the rest of this semester. As always, we have officer meetings on the off Thursdays of those days. So if you want to come and get a easy community service hour, come to the officer meetings as well. And lastly, if you're going to the regional meeting, please hang out after for just a few minutes. Any officers got anything else? Good? Okay. All right, so on that note, we'll go ahead and serve the altar. Yeah. No expense was spared.
And when we first went up, get a breadstick.
Oh, I already have. I'm up here.
Hey, girl.
Oh, so like a training club, like it is stunt training? Okay. So you just want like a start to like how to analyze financial statements for the purpose of stock trading? I don't have anything off the top of my head. Have you ever heard of Investopedia? They actually have a lot of pretty good resources. Like, I think with financial statement analysis, there's certain ratios that are more important than others. There's also the thing of the ratio, kind of it offsets a lot of the limitations of the mean ratio, but they'll have discussions like that on Investopedia. So I mean, I'm not a stock trader, so I can't tell you exactly what are the best ways I would go for. Yeah. a very good website, and I can't think of the name of it, and it allows you to, it takes all kinds of, and you're able to do a very detailed search based on what you're interested in, if you want to stock market. But it's free. There's a free version of it. I think TD Ameritrade makes you pay for it. This one. Oh, is there? Do they offer their research for free? I might also ask around, like some of the financial professors, like Dr. Hill College.
Testing, testing, testing.
It's like it feels like school because it's like oh here's this person whatever. Yeah. But even in like from my perspective, you start assessing like setting materiality. It's like oh this is $10 million. It's not serious. It's not material. It is. Basically, you think about what the listeners look at, their decisions. It's crazy. So how about yourself? Are you a senior as well? Or?
Yeah, I'll be graduating in December. I work for an architecture firm. I do everything. It's a fairly new firm. We just turned a multi-million, so that's kind of exciting.
Is it in Evansville here? Or?
It's in Newburgh. I basically just do financial forecasting and budgets and just making sure we don't run out of money.
Yeah, small department, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm the sole. If there was a CFO position, I'd be it.
So how did you get? Is it a family business or?
I got lucky. He started 3 or 4 years ago, and I was doing a little pressure washing business with my friend.
Yeah.
She was working for Harding Schmansky,
Okay.
and she did all his just bookkeeping at the time because that's all I needed. And she said, "Hey, you want a job?" And I said, "Sure." And it started out just QuickBook entries, and all of a sudden it's just grown and grown, and now I'm doing interviews and managing time cards and everything. So it's a pretty good deal. Pretty good gig.
Are you from Evansville then, or are you from?
Hopstadt.
Okay.
I used to live down in Texas. We lived there for 7-8 years.
Say the accent was a little.
Yeah.
Didn't try to be in Hopstadt.
Yeah, but now we're back, so yeah.
So you're, the day wigs up there in Hopstadt.
Yeah. One of the guys here, he actually works at Daywigs.
Oh, which one?
Yeah. Blue shirt over there. That's the big trademark for Hopstock at the racetrack.
Yep.
But,
Grew up in St. Louis. My family's all from Jasper. My family actually owns Merkley's in Jasper, so similar to Daywigs.
Yeah.
But in Jasper, so I know the Daywigs pretty well.
Yeah, I love Jasper, I really do. We're working with a construction outfit, Jasper Lumber. We work pretty close with them.
What's the name of the architecture?
Lamar Architecture and Design.
Okay.
LA+D, if you've ever seen. We've done some work in Davies County. I think we're starting to move up to Indy. We're doing a church for Luke Zeller, wherever he goes, South Union Christian Church.
Okay.
That's supposed to be a big deal.
So, you didn't have anything to do with the Jasper Library. I can't remember who the architect was on that.
No, we haven't done any work in Jasper. We just worked with Jasper Lumber.
Yeah. How many architects work there?
One. We've got about 4 or 5 draftsmen, an interior designer, architects, me, and a secretary. So
and you're still in school?
Yeah. So I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 5, and then come to school 8 to 5, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it works out.
Still do the pressure washing business, or did you get out of that?
We got out of that. We made some good money that year, but it was just, it was hard because I did it with a friend, and he wanted to go be a police officer, so he went up to Vincennes, and it's just, he had the truck, and so.
When I was in high school, I did a lawn care business.
Yeah.
It's great when you're younger.
It's fun.
You make a lot of money.
I'm
making $60 an hour mowing grass.
Yeah.
But you got to remember it's seasonal. Like, the thing is, I was like, oh, this would be great. I can keep doing this, but you can only go so high because you're limited by what you can do.
Anywhere late October to, about this time of the year, it's just kind of slows off, and you got to really make it in the summer to make it worth it.
And then when you start hiring people, that's when the real headaches come. Because it's hard to get anybody else to do, care as much as you do and do quality work. So but it's a good experience. I mean, definitely teaches you a lot about working hard. That's for dang sure.
Well, how'd you get started at Ernst & Young?
So I went to IU, and basically I went through accounting and finance, and got to the point where it's like, well, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go into corporate accounting. This is kind of a good starting point. And it was basically give it a shot for a couple of years, see how it goes, and then have opportunities after that. So I've been here for 7 years, so it's
good deal.
Yep, but I enjoy it. It's get to see something different. It's a good experience, and the opportunities, if I were to ever leave, are great. So that's definitely the selling point.
Skip this ad.
Yes.
Again, I have to take off, but it was really nice
nice
to meet
meeting you.
Thank you. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good.
Pause it there.
Yeah, about the biggest firms we've got is Harding and Kemper around here.
BKD.
BKD, BKD. They're probably the biggest one.
There we go.
I'm gonna grab some
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Clicker thing.
Um.
How do I go? Get the slides together. Just click on it.
Yeah, probably just click. Yeah. I think at one point we had a clicker in here, but then it just disappeared one day.
That's fine.
I have no idea.
I'll make it work. Do you want me to start now or wait till you guys get
We'll go through, so just give it a few minutes.
Yep. appreciate you guys all coming out tonight. My name is John Merkley. I'm a manager with Ernst & Young out of our Indianapolis office, and I work in our assurance practice, which is effectively audit. So set this up with Jesse. Just kind of wanted to take some time to obviously get EY an introduction to some of you guys at USI that probably have not seen EY around here in a while. Give a little bit of an overview of the firm, what we do, maybe a little bit of an overview of Big Four public accounting, and then from there, if you guys have any questions about about public accounting, about Big Four, anything in my career experience, any questions in general. I don't claim to know everything in the world, but I do know a lot of topics, CPA exam, etc. So I'll start off with just kind of a brief overview of the firm, and then we'll go from there. So just a little bit of a timeline of my career. So I started with Ernst & Young in the fall of 2011. I graduated not from USI, I went to IU, but I actually live in Southern Indiana, and I serve a lot of our clients in Southern Indiana. So I spend majority of my year on Berry Plastics. I also serve Atlas Van Lines here in town, and then Cook Group, which is out of Bloomington. So I do Cook Group, the consolidated audit, and then also they have French Lake Resort and Casino as a subsidiary that we issue a separate audit opinion on because they're a casino. So they have a requirement to have independent statements that get filed with the Gaming Commission. So you kind of look at those four companies, and there's quite a pretty broad variety in what they do, and that's part of why I enjoy public accounting is I'm not stuck in one industry and I get to see quite a bit. So that being said, I'll kind of go through the stuff on the firm and then open it up to you guys for any questions. So Ernst & Young is a global firm. There's some stats on here that I'm not going to remember. I'll just throw them up here. So tons of offices in the U.S. Locally we have one in Indianapolis, St. Louis, Louisville, Cincinnati, Nashville, kind of all the big cities, in the U.S. effectively. And then obviously we have the global presence around the world. So size of the company, if you kind of think about revenue, that's a good way to look at what a company does. So $31 billion in revenue, which is kind of hard for me to grasp. To give you some perspective, Berry is a very, very big company with about 150 plants, and they're sitting at just under $8 billion, so 4 times that. So there's a lot, basically, if you take what EY does around the globe, they serve a lot of clients and a lot of different service lines that add up to a lot of fees. And there's a lot, really what it's driven by is there's a lot of people, so to about 250,000 people that work for the firm. So we have 4 primary service lines. The one I can speak to the most is obviously assurance, and assurance is audit effectively. So financial statement audits, which is auditing the statements as well as giving an opinion over internal controls. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with 404, which is SOX. Basically, companies have to meet a standard of internal controls, and public companies do. And the audit firm is effectively, their job is to test and give an opinion on those internal controls. So that's what we do. So it's hand in hand financial statement audit and doing the control work. Advisory is another one of our service lines that involves quite a bit. So we have an IT advisory team. There's a lot of different sub-service lines within advisory, but it's kind of, to a certain extent, a risk advisory or consulting arm of the firm. Transaction advisory services is business valuations, due diligence, some of what people would call the sexier stuff would be the term for it. So it's the deals. If a company, for example, if Berry's looking at an acquisition, they can engage EY to go do diligence to effectively look at that company, evaluate the quality of the earnings, and evaluate potential synergies if they were to execute that transaction. And then tax, which is broad variety of tax practices. We have business advisory, basically tax consulting, so helping companies implement different tax restructuring programs. There's global compliance tax, which works hand in hand with audit to help us audit companies' deferred tax provisions, and there's human capital, et cetera. So there's all kinds of specialties within those service lines. Assurance is kind of the one that's I would say, the most generic. There's not much specialization within assurance besides maybe some of the industry-specific components. So this gives a little bit more detail on each of the service lines. So as I mentioned, assurance, there are a few small practices that we have within assurance that are different from audit. FIDS, which is fraud investigation. So if a company detects fraud, it's basically a team of folks that go into the company and figure out where the fraud came from, et cetera. When I first started, there was an individual that was in FIDS, and I think we were in training, and they got a call that in 2 days they had to be somewhere in Texas to basically start this investigation. So it's, you know, it's the detectives of the accounting world. So there's all kinds of, there's basically within assurance, which is kind of the practice I'll talk about the most, there's effectively a division between core assurance, so what I fall under, which would be central core assurance. So we serve a variety of industries that cover, as I mentioned, you know, for me, transportation, gaming and hospitality, retail and consumer products, which is manufacturing, et cetera. And then within the firm, there is a separate division which is called FSO. So FSO serves insurance, banks, et cetera. So it's more specialized in, as the name kind of says, financial services. So companies that offer financial services. And this will be, I'll bring this up a little bit later when I kind of talk about some of the postings that we have out there on your site. So FSO is, like I said, specific to insurance and banking. So in the Indianapolis office, for example, our FSO practice solely serves WellPoint or Anthem. So all they look at is a health insurance company. You go to different offices and they may be involved with banks, et cetera, but keep that in mind. So basically kind of the folks that we look for EY, or people that are a good fit for public accounting, are people that are basically, they're set up to work in a team environment. That's one of the biggest reasons why I've enjoyed working with Ernst & Young and being at the firm, is working with the different people. I've been lucky enough to work with some USI graduates, which is kind of why I'm here. The partner that I work for graduated from USI. His name's Jeremy Gallion, and working with some of these great people is what's kept me at the firm. And there's definitely a camaraderie within teams and within the firm that make it a great place to work. So in terms of some of the opportunities that are out there posted right now on the USI, I don't know if you guys, the Career Services website, or is there a technical term for it? Career Services website, okay. So we have internships for next year. So within basically all the service lines in Indianapolis. So the winter internships go from January to March, and you'll get to basically be on the team and do real meaningful work. And that's for folks that are going to graduate by May 2021 with 150 credit hours. So what's important for any position at EY, the intention is you have that 150 credit hours to be eligible to sit for the CPA exam, because that's really what we look for in all the candidates. So 2020, we've got the winter internships, which is January to March, as well as the summer, which runs from June to July. So both of those are good opportunities to, it's kind of a double evaluation. It's for you to evaluate the firm, how you like working in public accounting, and it's also an opportunity for the firm to evaluate you to make sure that it's a good fit. And by the end of the internships, they offer full-time employment for whenever you would graduate. So that's the goal, is kind of to do that audition, and you get paid. Interns get paid very well. It's a good experience. I personally did not intern, but everybody that has interned and then started really thinks it's a great experience, because you come in day one and have a little bit of a kind of tactical experience on how to execute the job. So a couple other little internship or little opportunities that we have out there. They do have one posting open for this fall, or I'm sorry, January full-time, FSO tax. So it's going to be, as I mentioned, FSO, financial services, insurance, basically, tax. And then there's a couple internships still open for this summer in tax. risk assurance, and then a launch internship, which is an opportunity for underrepresented candidates with a little bit later graduation date. But it's a good experience. It's a 2-year program, I believe, where you get to see 2 different service lines. So if you're interested in that, there's information out there. And then one fall opportunity for regular tax. So anybody that graduates this May that's interested in tax, we have an opportunity out there. So in general, I mentioned this before, you know, the CPA. I don't know how many folks in here are on, do you guys have like a CPA track at USI? How many folks are on that track or interested in that? You can't wishy-washy on that. There's not, okay. But like the 150 track, okay. So I think it's intimidating for a lot of people, but it's one of those things that if you put your mind to, it's definitely attainable, and it's good to have any kind of certification no matter what you do. So I personally, when I started with the firm, I took an exam and I waited and I screwed around, and then I did not pass mine until I was with the firm for almost 2 years, but I regret not getting it out of the way. So if it's something that you're interested in, definitely, you know, put your heart into it and pass it. It feels great once you have it behind you. And then it also opens doors for any further opportunities. You know, a lot of the postings that you see for experienced hires, you know, having the CPA is a good designation. It's a good thing to put behind your name. So just a general overview of you know, my day-to-day job, et cetera. I mean, the biggest things that I enjoy about it are working as a team, working in a changing environment. Nothing, you know, we always plan for things to be the same from year to year, and they never are, but that's also never a surprise to us, which is good. I mean, there is always a high attrition rate in public accounting with folks leaving to take other opportunities, which it sounds bad, but it's actually good for, you know, for you professionally, because it gives you the chance to step up and take that next role always. I don't ever feel like I'm log jammed to where, well, there's a person ahead of me and I'm not gonna get the next opportunity. Something's always gonna change, and that opportunity is gonna free up, which is really nice, I think. And I would say the biggest selling point for me on EY, somebody was asking me this earlier, was, you know, when I left college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do in accounting or finance. But I knew that if I went to EY and, you know, got a couple years experience, my opportunities would expand at that point, and it was kind of a good springboard into whatever I decided to do next. If you had asked me when I first started if I'd be here in 7 years, I would have told you you're crazy, but here I am. So, you know, it's a fast track in terms of promotion. In 2 years, you go from being a staff person to a senior, where you're effectively leading the jobs. 3 years later, you're a manager, and then 3 years after that, you're a senior manager. And then folks that do stay around to partner, it's about 12 years. So, but the number of people that make partner, I think, is about 1 in 25, and that's mostly people that have other better opportunities and they leave. These slides are just kind of some, you know, what is expected of you day one. I don't feel any need to kind of belabor these guys, but does anybody have any questions so far on public accounting in general, or kind of anything that I've talked about? Sure.
Does EY help students who are trying to take the CPA cover any costs?
Yep, absolutely. So I should have mentioned this. So once you have a full-time offer from EY will pay for your Becker software. I don't know if you're familiar with Becker Fast. You can do either the Fast Pass in person, or you can do the online studying. So they'll pay for that, and I think Becker costs about $3 or $4 grand now. So they'll pay for that, and then also as another incentive, if you pass the CPA exam within 1 year basically 1 year of when you start, there's a $5,000 bonus. Within 2 years, it's $3,000. So they definitely do give you every opportunity in the world to do that. No, they don't give you time off to study, you know, while you're employed. I think that'd be a little bit overkill, but Naturally, the way the start date kind of works is you graduate in May and you start in the fall in September. So the intent is you kind of have that summer to knock out some of your exams. But there's some folks that get them all done, and what ends up happening is they get their scores kind of right when they start, and some people will take a little bit longer. Like myself, I let it drag out, but looking back, it's good to just take them and get them out of the way.
Is there a certain window of time that you have to get your CPA within?
So you don't necessarily have to get it, but you will not get promoted to manager until you get your CPA. So it's pretty rare, there's been some people who, you get to be a third-year senior, which is when you'd be eligible to get promoted to manager, and they do not have them passed, so they do not get promoted to manager. And a lot of that's just because of the way the firm has structured kind of our internal risk procedure. So like a manager has to sign off on certain documents, and once manager has to have the CPA. So that's part of why they've said it that way. There's been people that are great seniors and would make great managers, and they got to that point and they didn't get their CPA, and a couple of them made it. They got it done basically in, the promotion would be June of that year. They got it done in June, the last day, and then there's been a couple that haven't, and they ended up leaving. So it's definitely something is earlier in your career, when you're closer to college, it's going to be a lot easier to get it done. I can tell you that, because if I sat down and took those exams now, there'd be some questions, I could probably knock them out of the park, but I bet 80% of that information, I don't remember it, because you just get to be so far removed from, government accounting and some of the stuff that you don't do on a daily basis. I would personally never remember it, so.
You said you're out of the Indianapolis office.
Yep.
Do you live in southern Indiana?
Yeah, it's a rare situation. So, my travel is a lot of southern Indiana. So, I'll come to Evansville. I'll go to Bloomington, and then we do some other travel, rarer travel around the U.S. I would say several years ago I was on the road more, and then now I'm married and I have a kid, so it's less. But you can make it what you want to be. I had years where I would spend probably 120 nights out of town a year between site visits and travel, et cetera. But then there's people that I work with in Indianapolis, and they're never out of town. They don't even know how to book a hotel through the firm. So it varies by job, et cetera. But when I first started, actually, so I live in Jasper. I started with EY in Indianapolis, and I didn't know what clients I was going to be on, et cetera. And I didn't, just like the CPA exam, I didn't get an apartment just yet. I was procrastinating it. So I started, and I was actually assigned to clients in Cincy and Fort Wayne and Shelbyville. So I was basically out of town. At that point, I was like, well, I'll just live in Jasper basically and just travel every week. And then one thing led to another. I got on Barry, and it was like, well, if I'm going to be on Barry in Evansville, I might as well let this ride. So it's a unique situation. But those years, like if I was on jobs in Indianapolis, I was traveling in Indy on my own dime. So wouldn't recommend it.
Where's EY's corporate office located?
That's a good question. The corporate, like the headquarter location, we kind of operate regionally. So in the U.S., there's in New York City. So our chairman of the U.S., which is, her name's Kelly Greer, she sits in New York City. But it's really scattered. We kind of operate to a certain extent regionally. So we fall under the central region, which we report up to Chicago. So we have offices everywhere that it's a massive structure that kind of funnels up. But there's always business between offices and between countries. So for example, on Barry has a significant operation in Brazil. So we have a component team in Brazil for the audit that inter-firm invoices us, and they do their own audit down there of certain accounts that we tell them to work on. They invoice us and then give us their work product, and it rolls up. So there's a lot of that goes on, with these multinational. We have Brazil, we have China, Spain, Germany. There's, it's multinational. So but I don't know that I've ever been to corporate. I don't know where.
Visit the other offices?
To a certain extent, yeah. So trainings are a lot of opportunities to meet folks from other offices. We have executive events twice a year, which are typically in Chicago. The firm does all kind of events to kind of make the firm, I guess, feel a little bit smaller. I mean, I know folks in kind of every office in the central region. I don't know very many people outside of the central region, just because I haven't had a lot of experience, with those people. But somebody can always pick up the phone and get a hold of somebody somewhere if we need something. So, it's a big firm, but it ends up feeling a little bit smaller.
Is there a rhyme or reason as to how you're assigned to your clients, or do you kind of get to pick which industries you work with?
So when you first start out, they ask for preferences. So in Indianapolis, we've got our large clients are within property. So Simon Property Group. So real estate. Simon, Kite. There's a couple other companies up there. We have life sciences, which Lilly falls under. That's a pretty big job in Indianapolis. And then really the rest of Indy is mostly manufacturing. So you let them know a little bit your preference when you start, and you may have a schedule that's quite a bit mixed. And then as time goes on, you kind of get shuffled around. So the jobs that I started on 7 years ago are not the jobs that I'm on now. So naturally they move you towards what you're most interested in. First job I was on was actually back when I first started. The firm did not have the designation between FSO and core assurance. So I was actually on WellPoint, and I was on the WellPoint Central team, which traveled to Mason, Ohio, which is Cincinnati. And that was probably my least interesting thing. I had no interest in insurance, but there was a need there, so that's what I worked on for the first year. And then I moved to manufacturing, and my schedule progressively changed. But the way it is now is the way it's been for a couple of years. So I'll have a small change next year, adding another client. But I mean, once you get to be a senior manager, it's fairly set until some massive need comes, which is typically a good opportunity to pick up something else. But the biggest thing to remember, and I think this applies to any job you go into, is they're putting you on something because they need you there. And even though it may not be the most interesting thing in a while, if you do a good job at it, and you basically tell them what your interests are at, any good company, if you're doing a good job and working hard, they're gonna make sure that you're happy, and they're gonna move you to what you want to do. So that's one thing I always keep in mind. We have new staff that come in, and they may not be happy with traveling, et cetera, but if they do a good job, and you want to keep good people, you do give your best effort to get them where they want to be. So, and sometimes that's hard, especially we have people that come in on Barry that are from Indianapolis, and that it's a lot of travel. Well, they do a good job, and it's hard for us because you end up turning them over to jobs that are in town in Indy, but that's in their best interest. You want to keep them with the firm. May not be my best interest where they're not working on my jobs, but they're still here, so that's the key. Any other questions?
So what do you look for specifically, like on resumes, when you're evaluating people for internships?
So I mean, if I was to look at it, obviously you have to meet a certain grade criteria, right? But I don't say a 4.0 is greater than a 3.9. Just you can't judge a person based on that numbers exclusively. A lot of it really comes down to you look at the experiences they have and some of the what makes them stand out individually. So I mean, it's hard to judge somebody just on their resume. One of the most interesting resumes I ever had, and actually came out of USI, was a guy who played professional poker for several years, and he's actually with the firm now. And I don't know if any of you guys know him, but he probably was 3 or 4 years ago. He played professional poker, lived in like Puerto Rico or Mexico or somewhere. But I mean, it was one of those things that was like, okay, this guy's interesting. We want to talk to him. And then the rest of the interview process, he did exceptionally well. Just had a ton of experience, ton of relatable experience, and he was just a good down-to-earth person. But resumes are great. I mean, you want to make sure you have a good resume, but when somebody sits down and has an interview with you, you want to be able to talk to everything on that resume. So it's great to have 50 different clubs listed out in that resume, but if you can't talk to the person who's interviewing you and tell them why that's important or what your contribution was there, I think it loses a little bit of its value. For example, like I don't know if my own resume was great or not. My resume had, you know, I didn't do all the student accounting societies. I think I was in one at IU, but the greatest experience I had was actually like true work. So I had, when I was in high school, I had my own landscape or my own land and landscape business, and then I also worked in a family business, which is a meat packing plant. So like I had all this experience there, and people were like, when I went into interviews, they're asking me about this because it's interesting, right? It's something different. So true work experience is great to have on a resume, I think, because it shows initiative. And not to knock on you guys' generation, but I mean, being able to work is a very good quality. Any other questions?
You guys have inside jokes about the other big 4 firms?
No.
Like KPMG being a golf company?
No, not really. I mean, the good news is for Indianapolis, at least from our perspective, like, EY dominates in the Indiana market. You go somewhere else, yeah, we probably get our butts kicked. But, I mean, we've got about 90% of Indy, so it's easy for us to be a little bit more confident. And just the size of our practice compared to the other ones, we've done well. And really what we can attribute that to was, you guys ever heard of Arthur Andersen? Is that name? Okay, so when Arthur Andersen went under, we absorbed the Arthur Andersen Indy practice. So that brought over Simon. That brought over a lot of our bigger clients and kind of made us, a big force in Indianapolis. But you go to Chicago, PwC's got us licked there. So no jokes about the other ones. I'm not that nerdy. I mean, I can come up with something better than that.
Do you think UI would ever consider having an office more southern than Evansville? I mean, I know they have one in Lexington or
Louisville. They used 2 years ago have regional offices. So when I first started, it was the year they closed. We had a Fort Wayne office because in Fort Wayne we had Lincoln Financial, and a lot of that Lincoln got moved back to Philadelphia. So I've lobbied for it. I mean, I think it'd be great to have an Evansville office, but realistically, probably not, just because of how we work is changing dramatically. I mean, you can work remotely more, and it probably just doesn't make a ton of sense. So, unfortunately, no, I would say no. It's not that hard to travel to Evansville, though. I mean, 3-hour drive, it's a great place to come and stay. I mean, people really call it Heavensville. I'm sure you guys do as well. It's better than going to Fort Wayne, I can tell you that. I was on a client up in Fort Wayne the first couple of years I was with the firm, and Evansville's definitely a better city. Never heard Heavensville before? No. Yeah. Some of the selling points of Evansville are it's always about 10 degrees warmer here than it is in Indy. That's what I always try to sell people on. We're on the beach on the Ohio, so it's basically, we come down here for a trip to the beach. I mean, you're on a different time zone, so when you come down here, it's great, so.
Did you ever work with Zach Reed?
Zach Reed. The name sounds familiar.
I think he started at his office, but I think he's in Seattle now.
Oh, okay. I think he interned or something.
Okay.
Yeah. He was in Beta Alpha Psi. Yeah, I remember the name. His family's from Seattle.
I think so.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions about CPA interviews? I forgot to mention, these are some of the awards that EY has won. This is like the 21st year, I think we've been in the Fortune top 100 workplaces. And the firm is, I think, this is something I should have mentioned. I think public accounting still has somewhat of a bad rap in terms of long hours. There's an intense busy season, et cetera. But I would say that the firm has really tried, and all the firms have really tried to address that and to make the job that we do a little bit more flexible and give you some time. You know, there are peak times. There's no denying that. You know, from the time that, you know, the company closes their books until the time that K has to be filed, that can be a very stressful time, and there's a lot of work that has to be done. However, the firm and teams are very good about being flexible outside of that time and working with folks. I mean, some of the programs that the firm has out there, it probably doesn't relate to you guys, and I didn't think it would forever for me too, but for parents, you get a 16-week fully paid maternity or paternity leave. So when my son was born, since my wife works full-time, I could take 16 weeks off. Fully paid, still accrue vacation, etc. I didn't take the full-time just because it makes me sound like a terrible parent, but I couldn't sit at home for 16 weeks. But I did take some of that time, and a lot of other people that I work with have taken the full-time and taken advantage of that. I mean, it's a great benefit that the firm puts out there. They've got some other programs too that are really meant to improve. You know, they focus on the quality of life. So it's not just, you know, creating a great work environment. It's your quality of life outside of work and maintaining that balance, because I think they know if you don't have that balance, then people are going to leave, which is unfortunate, but it's part of the career. And the other thing I try to highlight too is really the opportunities that come after you leave EY. So one of the other USI graduates that I worked with quite a bit at EY, she graduated probably, I don't know how, she's 26 or 27, so she would have graduated 5 or 6 years ago. Worked for EY for 2 years, and then Barry actually came to her and really wanted to hire her. So she went to Barry, worked a couple of years in their compliance department, and now she's actually got promoted again, so she's going to be a regional controller. She's moving out to Las Vegas to be a controller over a couple of their plants. So I don't know that, I'm not saying that she wouldn't have had those opportunities straight out of college or going anywhere else, but really having the exposure that she got at EY really helped her kind of springboard her career. So, you know, she's 26 or 27 years old, and she's in a pretty dang good position, if you ask me.
How many people work in your office, and then how many people are you hiring every year?
Our total office, I think, I want to say our audit practice is 180, assurance practice, I should say, 180 people. We roughly hire about 20 a year, 21 or 22 a year. And that's pretty consistent year over year. I mean, and most of them start in September. So other offices like Chicago, I think they hire, I want to say Chicago is about 120, 130. You go to the bigger cities and it's massive. Louisville's probably only like 6 per year. So it varies from city to city. For example, I started with 20. I think I started with 24. They had a year where they kind of boosted it up, and out of the 24, there's only 4 of us left. So, but all the people that the other 20 have all landed in great positions. So some days I'm a little bit jealous of them, but.
Did you start right out of college?
I did, yeah. So I graduated in May of 2011 from IU, and then I started in September of 2011. Time flies. I'll be 30 in a couple weeks. I can't believe it. What'd you say? Yeah, I appreciate it. Anything else? Is anybody interested in public accounting after this? Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh man, everybody's interested. You guys can all get hired in Chicago for sure. We'll have plenty of room in Chicago. Anything else? Thank you guys. I got all kinds of goodies up here for you. There's pens and phone chargers and these things.
You should have had us do some trivia.
Oh. Here, I'll do some trivia. What is EY's revenue? 31.7. Everybody that got it right can have something they want up here. So take them all. I'm tired of carrying them around. If somebody wants the bag, they can even have the bag. I've done my recruiting tour for the year. But like I said, those postings are out there. They're all due by February 21st, I think. So the sooner you get out there and put your application in, there will be a first. So put in the resume and all that stuff. Select which service line you're interested in. If you don't know and you have any more questions, Jesse's got my email. Reach out to me. I'll give you my phone number. You can call me, whatever, just to make sure you're applying to the right one. This is not me being spit. Do not apply to the FSO one, thinking that that's like the audit one. I think there's been a couple people in the past that have done that. They apply to FSO thinking audit is financial services, but FSO is, like I said, you're going to be working on insurance in Indianapolis. So if that's what you're interested in, absolutely go for it. But so February 21st, applications are due. Are you pointing me?
No, I just had a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Not to interrupt you. Is this one of the prizes or is this yours?
That one's mine.
Okay.
But I've got more. There's plenty of them in here. I earned that one at the last event. So February 21st, applications are due. There'll be, if you're selected, there is then a video interview that you sit in front of your computer and you like do these recorded interviews. We'll watch those and then we'll come down here. March, I think 21st is the day we have scheduled, and we'll do in-person interviews at USI as well. So then by that point, it'll be myself and Jeremy Gallion, who went to USI. So you guys got a homer that's helping, and then we'll do the interviews and then go from there. But if you're interested, I strongly encourage you to apply and at least, do the internship. Then you can find out you can get paid. You get paid well, and then you could, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But definitely happy to be here and get some more USI folks in the door. So.
Yeah, we're happy to send them your way. So.
Yeah. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you. Good stuff. All right, well that pretty much concludes everything for today, guys. We have some extra food if anyone wants some. The sign-up sheets are over there. The sign-up sheet get all the way around. Yeah, good. No one's telling me no, so. And then, people are going to the regional meeting